Grigory Kogan was a Soviet pianist, teacher, and musicologist. He was one of the first to create a systematic course on the history and theory of pianism and became known for his brilliant lectures and writings. His books are still valued because they shift the focus from pure mechanics to the psychological and artistic side of piano playing, helping musicians to connect technique with real artistry. It seems this book has never been translated into English, so I'm really glad to present a review for you and share its key ideas. The book hooked me right away with its opening line: "Technique runs into psychology, and in many cases cannot progress without its help." Chapter 1. Kogan starts by mocking the 19th century mechanical school, teachers who encouraged mindless drilling. His favorite caricature is Kalkbrenner's handrest device, which fixed the hand position so well that he could read a book while practicing. The result? Fingers moved, but the mind was elsewhere. Kogan reminds us, technique is a mental process. Practicing means thinking, not moving the fingers mindlessly. However, even nowadays, some treat practicing mechanically. I have quite a few friends actually who watch sport games or read a book while nailing their passages. Fast forward to the late 19th century and early 20th century. The anatomical physiological school zoomed in on biomechanics, complete with diagrams of joint angles and gram weights of the hand. Sounds scientific, of course, but in practice it often paralyzed students, so busy monitoring every muscle that they couldn't actually make music. His takeaway: thinking too much about the mechanics during playing destroys fluency. Here's where I almost agree with Kogan. He warns that thinking about efficiency can be paralyzing. And while yes, endless over-analysis can freeze you, most students aren't overthinking, they are underguided. In my experience, an intuitive grasp of good motion is rare, and many students need a demonstration from a teacher, and for many others, even a demonstration is not enough, and a clear breakdown of the motion is necessary. Very often, I have to explain things in baby steps, by providing students with preparatory exercises and breaking the motion, a complex motion, in parts so they actually can do a necessary motion properly. Without such work, their musical intention just feeds more tension and struggle, and this happens very often with musically gifted students who feel the music in a very emotional way but don't know how to use their body, so they end up being very tense. So great pianists and advanced piano players can sometimes simply think of the sound and the fingers obey, but most learners need more than that. And by the way, if you want to get rid of tension and improve efficiency of your piano playing, check out my comprehensive rebuilding technique course by following the link below. Chapter 2. If we can't fixate our attention on the mechanics, where should our attention go? Kogan's answer: the goal of the movement. He illustrates it with Stanislavski's famous exercises for actors. Ask a student to raise their arm or move their leg, just like that, without any clear goal, and they produce a stiff, awkward pose. Ask them to reach for a peach on a high branch, or tell them to press a cockroach on the floor, and the body instantly organizes for the specific task. So for pianists, the ultimate goal is not applause or personal glory, as Kogan warns us. As Stanislavski famously said, an artist must love the role, not themselves in the role. So our goal is the musical result, the sound you want to produce, the story you want to tell. And he draws a beautiful analogy. A true artist doesn't invent something, but watches the image until it emerges with clarity and relief. Most students, he laments, settle for approximately darker, approximately lighter, instead of truly perceiving fine nuances of what they want to achieve. That's why when I teach, I often ask a student, what is the character of the piece? What do you want to express? And I don't accept a general answer, general words like, oh, it's a sad piece. Because I want a specific nuance of this emotion. So I would ask, like, is it sad like you feel lonely and depressive on a rainy day, sitting with your tea by the window? Or is it sad like when you see some injustice and you can't accept it and you want to fix it but you don't know how? So is it light nostalgia or something truly tragic, like when someone passed away? Those are completely different states, which can be both described as sad, but there's so much more nuance to this. And we need to be specific in what kind of story we want to tell. From here, Kogan offers a great hierarchy: seeing, remembering, imagining, realizing. You must sharpen your perception to see fine nuances, to perceive with clarity in order to memorize. And this is actually true because people who have phenomenal memory, they are actually more attentive than most. They perceive smaller nuances that most people overlook, and this helps them to memorize. And this memorization, this bank of your memories, will in turn feed your imagination and your fantasy, because when we imagine and we produce new ideas, we base them on our previous experiences. That's why you should have a big bank of memory in order to have great fantasy. And this fantasy and imagining in turn will help you provide great artistry and to create great art. It will guide your execution. He also states a truth that every musician and every teacher knows. The path from 0 to 90 is shorter actually than from 90 to 100. So those last few percents of perfection are very, very hard to achieve. That's why if you want to be excellent on stage, you have to terribly over-practice your pieces. Kogan's first chapters force us to face an uncomfortable truth. Most of us think we are aiming for the goal, but often we are aiming at the wrong one. For example, feeding our ego instead of music. Still, I believe his just think of the sound approach only works for the rare, naturally coordinated player. For the rest, we need both a vivid artistic goal in mind and clear, guided setup for technique, so the fingers actually know how to obey. Considering author's entrance quote about role of psychology, I wish the author had taken one more step and stated something I find both obvious and absolutely essential. Mindset is crucial for developing a natural technique and for avoiding injury. Many pianists who suffer from injuries later realize that stress was one of the main causes. And it makes sense, because psychological stress inevitably turns into physical tension. If you practice under constant pressure, the need to succeed, the fear of not being good enough, or the feeling that your teacher treats you like a farmer, never quite measuring up, then your risk of injury skyrockets. Do the same task, the same work with a calmer, healthier mindset, and the chances of harm are drastically lower. That's why mental state and technical work must go hand in hand. Chapter 3. Kogan explores the role of concentration. He distinguishes it from simple attention. Attention alone, he says, isn't enough. Real artistry requires a total mobilization of both intellect and emotion, what Kogan even calls obsession, when an artist can't think of anything else. This idea is very inspiring, of course, but also controversial in my opinion. Such obsession can fuel great art, but it also risks burnout and unhealthy side effects. Still, Kogan goes further with a fascinating distinction. He makes a distinction between ordinary absent-mindedness, when your mind is all over the place and you can't concentrate on anything, versus artistic absent-mindedness, when your attention is not fixated, but acutely perceiving and aware of everything. The latter is really a kind of distribution of attention, the ability to hold the whole work in mind, yet instantly zoom into detail when needed. And he stresses that this ability to distribute attention comes only after first learning deep focus on one single object. That reminds me actually strongly of meditation training I recently did. We began by concentrating only on one small point of the body for a really long time, and it was very hard, very boring, and very frustrating. And only later expanded awareness to the whole body. So Kogan applies the same principle to music. Why does this matter? Because a pianist needs both awareness of details, to be able to zoom in every detail, and global awareness. While playing, you should flow with the piece as a whole, but at any moment, you must be able to zoom in quickly on a difficult passage or chord. And just yesterday, actually, we were discussing this with my patrons on Patreon, and I actually hold monthly Zoom meetings with my patrons, so hop in if you are interested to become a part of our musical community. And we were discussing the interview of Marc-André Hamelin, where he said that he had a state of flow only a handful times during his career. And it's an amazing state where the music just kind of flows through you, and you're more like an observer. You don't really interfere much with that flow. And I had the same experience time to time on stage, and I would describe it that I felt like a conductor who just supports the musical flow and observes it, and my body knew what to do. So it was so easy and natural. But even when you are in this mode, you must be able to quickly swap it and zoom into a specific detail. That's why Kogan insists, never let any passage or chord be learned mechanically. Every note should be consciously understood in practice. To illustrate true concentration, Kogan shares an old story. In choosing a minister, candidates were told to walk through the city with a vessel filled to the brim with milk. The one who didn't spill a drop, even while shots rang around him and there were a lot of loud events, this candidate was chosen. His gaze never left the milk. He didn't even notice any perturbance around him. And I can absolutely relate. Once, when I was performing a freshly learned Chopin concerto, a massive TV camera fell from the stage into the hall with a deafening crash just behind me. Luckily, no one was hurt because there was a distance between the stage and the audience, but the sound was enormous. And yet, I was so absorbed in the performance because the concerto was so fresh and I wanted to play it well so badly that I didn't even flinch. And that's exactly the focus that Kogan means. Kogan then moves on to a fascinating question which of course interests many of you. How much should one actually practice? Opinions vary wildly. Some pianists recommend 2 hours a day, others 3, 5, some even up to 14 hours. But Kogan makes the only reasonable point. It's not about the number of hours, it's about the quality of your focus. He advises to stop as soon as you notice that your concentration is fading, because practicing without focus not only fails to help, but actually harms your progress. He also recommends taking short breaks every half hour, and this is a method which I also mentioned in my previous video, so check it out. And here Kogan makes another very important distinction about the different kinds of performance excitement. He warns us that the word nervousness or excitement can actually mean 2 very different things, and the reason why he specifies it, because in East European languages, many of these languages have the same word, for example, волнение in Russian or хвилювання in Ukrainian, which can mean both nervousness in a negative sense and excitement in a positive sense. That's why differentiating those 2 states is crucial according to Kogan. For example, we can have the excitement of uplift. This is the kind of heightened state every artist needs. It's born from inspiration, from the music itself. It sharpens attention, mobilizes your strength, and makes the performance more vivid. So if you go on stage and if you feel nothing in particular, if it's just another day for you and you're like, okay, whatever, I go to play another concert, but you don't feel that excitement inside, most likely you will not be able to provide a great concert. So this excitement, this fire inside of you is really essential to play with passion. But then we have the excitement of panic, which comes from nervousness, from this negative state. And this comes not from the music, but from pride and ego, fear of failing, fear of being not good enough. This kind of excitement destroys your playing, shifts attention away from the work and onto yourself, and leads to tension and mistakes. Kogan's conclusion is clear. Both states feel like nervousness, but only one feels artistry. The other drains it. Kogan also makes a truly wonderful point. There isn't much difference between exaggerating your abilities and belittling them. So self-glorification, where you're like, oh, look at me, I'm the great pianist and so on. And self-deprecation, when you say like, oh no, I can't play, I always, I'm not good enough. Those are 2 sides of the same coin. In both cases, the focus is on yourself rather than on the art. Kogan then gives examples from soldiers who had lived through combat. Their memories are striking. In the middle of the action, they had no time to feel fear. The fear came only later, after everything was over. From this, Kogan suggests that performers should develop the ability to direct all their attention to the process and to the artistic task at hand, while forgetting themselves and their ego. For this, a tip from another great teacher, Heinrich Neuhaus, and I have a special video on Heinrich Neuhaus, so check it out. So his tip works also very well. Before a performance, go with your eyes through the score and plan carefully creative tasks for each spot. Like in bar 1, I have to stress this chord, and in bar 2, I have to make crescendo exactly to this point. In bar 3, I have to convey this specific emotion, and then I have to make this particular motion. So you create like a protocol for the whole performance. And this strategy, according to Neuhaus, has helped to a student who had too many memory lapses on stage, who were losing their text like catastrophically on stage. And this strategy helped them to play with much more stability, because they shifted their attention from their panic of failure towards a clear protocol to follow on stage. So this leads Kogan to another important idea. An artist should develop a kind of split state. One part of you completely merges with the character, living through every emotion with full intensity. The other part calmly observes, ready to correct and guide if needed. This reminds me, again, of meditation practice, where you learn to split your awareness, on one hand being fully present in the moment, and on the other hand watching yourself kind of from the outside. And here lies the paradox. Emotional excitement inside the role can exist together with creative calmness outside the role. And this is what also Shalapin, prominent singer of the first half of the 20th century, has mentioned when he was fully living through the role, and he could be so moved by music that he could even cry on stage. But at the same time, there was another part of him who would not only be objective, but also sometimes cynical, judging that another part. So the condition is this. The creative calm of your observer is the condition for living truthfully in the artistic image. If you don't have a calm observer, you can't immerse yourself in the music without risk. The performer needs both calmness on the one hand and artistic excitement on the other. This artistic excitement, this deep focus on the material itself, is exactly what protects the performer from failing and from falling into panic and self-centered fear. Chapter 4. Kogan mentioned something I have been saying since long ago, that it is far easier to memorize works that spark a genuine emotional response. Memory here is not mechanical, but rooted in vivid emotional experience. That's why I don't like assigning pieces for students. When they ask me, I would probably suggest them a range of pieces, maybe, or just a composer, let's say, but I want them to make their own research and choose works that spark their genuine emotional response. Because when a piece resonates emotionally, it imprints itself naturally and securely. Kogan stresses that not every teacher is right for every student. A great pedagogue for one may be ineffective for another, depending on personality and temperament. Teaching is not just about knowledge, but about the emotional and psychological fit between teacher and student. Kogan also writes in chapter 4 about the power of wanting. He explains that there's a big difference between a mild wish and a deep, irresistible desire. If someone offers you a sandwich, one is with ham and another one with cheese, and they're like, okay, do you want cheese or ham? And you might not care much either way, and you're like, okay, that one or this one, whatever. That kind of weak wanting doesn't move mountains. But true artistic work requires something different, a burning, specific desire, the kind of wanting that leaves no alternative. According to Kogan, only this intense inner drive gives the strength to overcome difficulties and actually reach results. This reminds me of something a conductor once told me when I was younger. He said to me, "You will succeed in music only if you have no other choice." In other words, it's not enough to simply like music or want it casually. You need to have this kind of uncompromising drive Kogan describes, the feeling that nothing else will ever be enough. Thank you for watching this video, and if you want to improve your piano playing skills, check out my comprehensive courses by following the link in the description. See you next time.